Dozens of Afrikaners who claim discrimination in their home country are heading to the United States, right, where your administration is going to welcome them as refugees. Now, this comes as you've halted virtually all refugee admissions for people fleeing famine and war from countries like Sudan and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Why are you creating an expedited path into the country for Afrikaners but not others?
Because they're being killed, and we don't want to see people be killed. Now, South Africa leadership is coming to see me, I understand, sometime next week. And, we're supposed to have I guess, a G20 meeting there or something. But we're having a G20 meeting. I don't know how we can go unless that situation's taken care of. But it's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about. But it's a terrible thing that's taking place. And farmers are being killed. They happen to be white. But whether they're white or black makes no difference to me. But white farmers are being brutally killed, and their land is being confiscated in South Africa. And the newspapers and the media, television media, doesn't even talk about it. If it were the other way around, they'd talk about it. That would be the only story they'd talk about. And I don't care who they are. I don't care about their race, their color. I don't care about their height, their weight. I don't care about anything. I just know that what's happening is terrible. I have people that live in South Africa. They say it's a terrible situation taking place. So we've essentially extended citizenship to those people to escape from that violence and come here.
All right, we stay with the story and we speak to Hein April, who is a member responsible for policy and business development in the SA Chamber of Commerce in the US, and joins us live now. Good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time. So just a warning, as we are having this conversation, we are watching some of the pictures there that as they set up for this press briefing that we are expecting to take place at the Dallas airport in Virginia. In fact, as we've seen now, this group of 49 arriving. So if I do stop you at any point, please allow me as we take this, and then we'll come back to our conversation. Now, one of course, the big conversations has been to see when this plane does touch down, what becomes, the next move. And we've just seen now the Deputy Secretary of State, Christopher Landau, as well as the Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security, and that is Troy Edgar, giving their remarks there to the group of 49 that has now arrived, touched down at the airport. What is your reaction to these developments just this weekend and today?
Look, thank you so much for having us tonight. What our reaction is that we as a business chamber is always of the view that these people that has come now to the United States of America would form part of the diaspora. And we have got a mandate from those who are part of the chamber we are completely apolitical. We've got carrying no brief from the US government or the South African government, as it were. Our brief is that it would be fair enough to say that America is a land of a lot of opportunity. It is one of the biggest economies, not the biggest in the world. And if South Africans are coming to America to come and express to participate in the economy, that is something that must be welcome. We are of the view that just like South Africa, America is the place where one will have to work and earn your weight and carry your own weight, and business is ready to welcome these members of South Africa.
And you say that they form part of the diaspora. We just saw them landing now. They're carrying US flags. Certainly nothing about South Africa. And you listen to the Deputy Secretary of State and saying that, he appreciates the difficulties that they were facing in their countries, and they welcome to the US. And just this afternoon, President Trump saying again, and I quote, "White Afrikaners are being killed. We don't want them to be killed. White farmers are being brutally killed and their farms taken from them." So how confident are you that they will still remain part of the diaspora, given the fact that they did not have a South African flag in sight?
We are appreciative of the fact that there is definitely communication happening between the diplomatic channels, and I think with a meeting that will take place between President Ramaphosa and President Trump next week would be something where would be a place where this will be dealt with on that level. Remember, we are talking about diplomatic ties. that we've got with the USA, and there is systems in place that will have to be followed. I know that there's a lot of disinformation and there's a lot of misinformation that is being peddled by groups, but this I think will be handled by the two presidents when they do meet next week in the United States.
Do you think that meeting could be enough to change the U.S. president's mind? Because despite the fact that South Africa in the public domain has, rebutted what has been said, the president has come out to say quite a lot, even today again saying the same thing. Do you think it might be enough to change the U.S. president's mind?
I think that between presidents, it is a different kind of a conversation that happens. We can say from where we are sitting, we are not aware of any single piece of land that has been confiscated and not compensated. We can attest that yes, crime is very high in South Africa, but that crime that is high is not only affecting white South Africans; it is affecting black South Africans, coloreds. It's affecting all of South Africans, and that is something that I think needs to be looked at, but not something that is only affecting a certain race group. And we are of the view that that misinformation will be rectified by President Ramaphosa when he meets with President Trump and have that bilateral.
Are you aware, as the chamber, what kind of vetting criteria was used to check these individuals?
The chamber is completely not involved in the vetting criteria when it comes to any citizen going for holiday or going for business or going to apply for refugee status. We are not involved in any of that. We carry a brief to advocate for business diplomacy. We carry a brief to advocate for bilateral and multilateral economic relations. And we have got no idea of who has gone, or what the criteria has been, and how they have been approved by the United States. So we cannot answer on that.
And if I can just ask you to pause just for a sec, that briefing that we've been waiting for, it seems to be starting at the moment. I don't know if you can bring up those visuals and actually see if that briefing there with the Deputy Secretary of State as well as the Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security is actually getting underway.
South African refugees to arrive in our country pursuant to the President's executive order about certain egregious actions in South Africa. The President made it clear that Afrikaners in South Africa who are the victims of unjust racial discrimination would be welcome to come to the United States, and he's now delivering on that promise. The Deputy Secretary and I just spoke to some of the folks who arrived on this flight, and they tell quite harrowing stories of the violence that they faced in South Africa that was not redressed by the authorities, by the unjust application of the law. The United States, as we were proud to say, stands for equal justice under law and the fair and impartial application of the law. And again, this is a group that has not experienced that and has, to the contrary, experienced violence and really fear for their lives in South Africa. They were really subject to very serious, egregious and targeted threats. And we wish them well in their journey of the United States. We underscored for them that the American people are a welcoming and generous people, and we underscored the importance of assimilation into the United States, which is one of the very important factors that we look to in refugee admissions. And through this resettlement program for these folks who were vetted in South Africa, and we're sending a clear message that the United States really rejects the egregious persecution of people on the basis of race in South Africa, and we welcome these people to the United States and to a new future. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Good afternoon. I'm Deputy Secretary Troy Edgar. First of all, I just want to thank President Trump, Secretary Noem, for the opportunity to come down here and welcome these folks from South Africa. I also am very grateful for Deputy Secretary Landau. We do a lot of work together to try to further the objectives of the president, and this has been a very important day. It was great to greet these folks that came in, to hear their stories, to hear what they've been through. This is a real situation. These people have went through a lot of stuff, and we're just grateful to have them in the U.S. As many of us know, the United States has a long history of bringing people over. My wife was an Iranian, came over during the regime change in the 70s, and she's now here, speaks 5 languages, a school teacher. We think the American dream is possible for these South Africans. We're super excited for them, and Deputy Secretary and myself have given these people our personal information and said anything we could do to help them be successful. We just want to wish them the best. We thank you guys for coming down here and celebrating this with us. Thank you.
A couple questions. First, Breitbart.
Hi, thank you for your time. What are some examples of racial discrimination or attacks that initially caught the eye of the Trump administration, and is there a pathway to American citizenship for these refugees?
Sure. Well, thank you for that question. I think if you look at the executive order that the president issued back on February 7th of this year, it talks about the terrible expropriation act that was enacted last year in South Africa that allows for the expropriation without compensation of farmland. A fair number of these refugees were farmers who've farmed this particular land for generations and now face the threat not only of expropriation, but also of direct violence. We had a chance to speak to them about many of these folks have experience with threatening invasions of their homes, their farms, and a real lack of interest or success of the government in doing anything about this situation, as well, obviously, as several very vociferous South African politicians repeating things like kill the Boer, kill the Afrikaner, and these people have been living under a shadow of violence and terror for some time now. Thank you.
And BBC.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to know, there were many, from the BBC. There are many people who fit the criteria of seeking help, who are fleeing persecution. Afghans, for example, they live in a country run by the Taliban, but they're being denied refugee status. So I'm wondering, why has such an exception been made for the Afrikaners, especially when the South African government says they're not in danger? And are you going to open up the refugee settlement program for others?
Thank you for that question. I think you may recall that on the president's first day in office, on January 20th of this year, he issued an executive order that paused U.S. refugee programs that had been going at record levels under the prior administration and had brought in people that we were not sure had been carefully vetted for national security issues, and put a pause on the refugee admission program in general. That pause, of course, was subject from the very beginning to exceptions where it was determined that this would be in the interest of the United States. Some of the criteria are making sure that refugees did not pose any challenge to our national security and that they could be assimilated easily into our country. So the president on February 7th issued an executive order about the egregious conditions in South Africa, and all of these folks who have just come in today have been carefully vetted pursuant to our refugee standards, and whether or not the broader refugee programs for other people around the world will be lifted is still an ongoing consideration. But again, the president has recognized the dire situation of this particular group of people, and again, they went through the process. It is not surprising, unfortunately, that a country from which refugees come does not concede that they are refugees, and Unfortunately, the South African government has not done what we feel is appropriate to guarantee the rights of these citizens to live in peace with their fellow South Africans, which is why, under our domestic law, they were given refugee status. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much. How many people have come? How many people have been brought over? Release the number.
All right, let's get an initial reaction now from you, Mr. April, on what you just heard.
Well, I think it's alarming to hear that on the level on that level of diplomacy, that the information that is being carried is still vague and is still untrue and still untested. And one would dare to say that we don't want to get involved in the politics that is behind it, but we are advocating for economic diplomacy, as it were. I cannot tell you if through the vetting system and through the statements that has been made right now, that there's anyone who could have given a case number to the police or to the American embassy to show them that they have gone through those kind of things. I think it is something that is worrying, but we are not mandated to speak on politics. However, as it were, ours is to advocate for our South African businesses in the US, our importers, our people who are doing work in the US, vice versa.
And if you are hearing then, this evening, the two deputy secretaries, right, they speak about the fact that these are individuals who are not allowed to be free in their country, and they've been carefully vetted whether or not the rest of the refugee program, of course, will be reopened, etc. But it's not surprising that the South African government has not conceded that they are refugees, and also saying that they have not experienced a fair and impartial application of the law, and they are being targeted, and of course, much of what has been said. When you then look at this economic diplomacy that you're calling for, as far as the businesses in the US are concerned, one wonders though, do the businesses in the US believe that this can be done? And two, how concerned are they that this has been the climate ever since the US President Donald Trump returned to office?
I think businesses that is in the US currently doing business in South Africa would know that this is not a fair assessment of what is being said, and it is not a fair assessment in terms of how the business relationships is. We have suffered on their businesses have suffered on the South African Stock Exchange, JSE, a lot because of this disinformation, and the people who has peddled this disinformation is surprisingly not part of the people who have gone to be refugees, the ones who have started with all of those things. It's surprising that not one of them has applied for refugee status. And I think that should be a message in its own. But be that as it may, we don't want to be involved in the politics. I can say to you that the South Africans that are there in the USA, we don't know them by name, we don't know them by trade, and I surely wish them well in whatever they are going to endeavor to achieve in the United States of America.
And I remember at some point, just before I let you go, at some point, of course, there was that huge, reaction in the public domain when Neil Diamond, for example, who's with the organization that you're with, was talking about around 70,000 when it comes to the white South Africans that would have, shown interest in resettling in the United States. And then I remember at some point he was being asked, are you facilitating? Are you involved in this particular process? What happens now and all of that? But you're saying now that these are individuals that you do not know by name and all of that. So does this mean that they were not part of this 70,000 that had shown interest and are simply just coming from their own particular processes?
Just to clarify again, that the number that that Neil Diamond gave through is not numbers of people that has made an application. It's people that wanted more information, and that information has been given over to the embassy in Pretoria. I cannot tell you that the 49 people, because I tell you that we don't know their names, whether they are part of those people that has made inquiries via our website or not. But we are in no ways encouraging a brain drain from South Africa, a skills drain, or South Africans to leave, because we believe that the ideals of Ubuntu, the one nation, the rainbow nation that we are, we continue to be. And as South Africans, with having a GNU in place currently, we are seeing a lot of positive changes coming and spin-offs coming for business and for South Africans living in South Africa. And we are hoping that through our diplomatic channels, we will continue to be that kind of voice in the world where we see that people can live together united, regardless of race, tribe, ethnicity, or religion.
Yeah.
And we are pressing for that, and we are hoping that this would yield business, more business opportunities that could benefit both those people that still has got family in South Africa. And if they could make a success of their lives in America, it could really be a spin-off for their people in South Africa to continue to benefit from their work. And so we are saying that as the SACUSA, we are committed to seeing growth, economic growth, for South Africans that is doing work in the USA, vice versa. And that is what we are advocating for. We are hoping that with the visit of next week, where President Ramaphosa will be visiting President Trump, that there will be a clarity and proof and facts on the table that would put the record straight. That is what our hopes are for.
I appreciate your time, Mr. April. Thank you so much for chatting to us.